Hi, I'm Linda Moulton Howe, reporter and editor of Earthfiles.com and the Earthfiles YouTube channel. And tonight is the first of what I hope will be weekly evenings where I can come together with you for what I hope will be breaking news to some extent each week. And then I'm going to keep reaching in to experiences that I have had in my life that I really haven't talked about in the public, that I think have helped me begin to penetrate and understand a little bit more about what kind of an alien presence could be interacting with this planet and why our government, with the allies of World War II, took a position of policies of denial and lies for the last 70 years and counting, and that maybe we are on the brink of a crossroads going into 2018 where that is finally going to change and we will get an announcement that we're not alone in the universe. And part of the exciting science that is beginning to break through constantly all of the time was this past week, and this was in the first week of October 2017, the Nobel Prize Committee in Stockholm, Sweden. They have honored two groups of scientists for outstanding work in physics and biochemistry. And for those of you who use Google Earth, think of that moment when you type in a latitude and longitude and then your screen starts zooming down into a location. And then you get there and you can use Google Earth controls to go down closer and closer. Well, that's what biochemists in Switzerland and New York's Columbia University and the UK's MRC Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge, England, have figured out how to do this with molecules, organic molecules, living molecules, down to the atomic level. The three winners of the Biochemistry Nobel Prize perfected very cold electron microscopy to work with electron beams to zoom down to the molecular and atomic detail. And this is in living biology. This technology was recently used to reveal the structure of the Zika virus. So in the future, being able to get down into this living molecular and atomic level of living creatures is going to help develop new medicines and vaccines. And then on the physics side of the Nobel Prize, Barish, Kip Thorne, and Weiner Rice. They're all three physicists, and they were cheering with champagne glasses in their hands because they are the very first three scientists to ever detect the faint ripple of gravity waves moving through the universe. This was 2 years ago in September 2015. And this was also a boost for physicist Albert Einstein, who 101 years ago, he said in his general relativity treatise that there are gravity waves in this universe. And he said, if they were ever found, that we would know that those gravity waves were transporting energy as gravitational radiation similar to electromagnetic radiation. And that brilliant Einstein theorized that space-time itself can be stretched and compressed by collisions of massive objects in the universe, such as black holes colliding. Well, physicist Kip Thorne, receiving this Nobel Prize announcement, he compared gravity waves to, quote, a storm in the fabric of space-time that is produced when two black holes collide, close quote. Harvesting gravity to move point to point through the cosmos by bending space and time. The very first time that I heard about this was in 1982. This was after I had produced the TV documentary special on the worldwide bloodless animal mutilations. And I had moved on to another exciting subject at the station, which was that in Denver at Martin Marietta, they were training astronauts in this huge building. And it was just exciting to be in there. They were all dressed up in their astronaut suits, And they were on these big cranes, and they would take them through all kinds of exercises. And the crew and I went there to get this film of these astronauts doing this training in this big building. And there was one particular area of research where I needed to go to Ball Aerospace, which was between Denver and Boulder, big facility. And I needed to work in a clean room on a very particular kind of instrument that they were going to make to put up at the ISS. So I went to Ball Aerospace, and I had on my badge, Director of Special Projects, KMGH TV, and I found myself with a group of about 7 or 8 men and myself, and we were all being toured around because of security issues in a little group by somebody who had been assigned to us. And I had a specific lab that I wanted to look at. Each of the other men were there for various reasons, but we were in a group together. So they were moving us around inside of Ball Aerospace. And at one point, one of the men, very clearly, his badge said Wright Patterson, and it was a laboratory, Ring Laser Laboratory. And I was so interested. And I said to him, "Sir, I see that you're from Wright Patterson. I would love to know what kind of work you do." And he said, "Well, I work with Ring Lasers. What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a producer, writer, director, editor at the local CBS station in Denver. And I do documentaries about science, medicine, and one that I did last year had to do with animal mutilations, and it's a very puzzling subject. I wonder, in any of your work in Wright-Patterson, have you ever heard of anything like that?" And there was that beat, that pause. I've come to take it as a signal from people who cannot talk out in the public that they probably do know something. And he said, "May I call you later?" And I said, "Yes." So I got a phone number, he got my phone number, we went all on our separate ways. And that evening, at my home in Littleton, Colorado, the phone rang, and this gentleman said, "I'm the physicist." And he said, "I couldn't say anything there in that lab, but I do know about the phenomena that you have reported about." And he said, "I think there's one piece of information that I can communicate to you that might help you in your work and that I know is a fact." He said, "We are dealing with intelligences in this universe that can bend space and time the way you would fold a napkin or a cloth. You can be at one end of the universe and something else at the end of the universe, and if you know how to deal with the mathematical frequencies of bending space-time, you can move point to point. No Euclidean geometry move." And when he said that to me all the way back to 1982, I had not gone the thousands of miles that I have gone in this subject since. I have now had discussions with other people about the fact that in this universe, our government knows, and we have even communicated with, intelligences that are moving what we would call light years, and they can move point to point. And I have talked in television, in documentaries, in radio, trying to help people understand what is and are the details in animal mutilations. And sometimes I think that it is so repulsive to audiences, even though it is as eerie and weird as I know it at so many levels, that I wanted tonight, because this is sort of our first path together, I wanted to take you back with me to the moment that I was producing Glimpses of Other Realities, Volumes 1 and 2. Those were my second and third books after the first big one, An Alien Harvest. And in Glimpses 1 and 2, it took 8 years to do both of those books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. They're each about 400 pages each. And somehow the arc of what I wanted to say in those 2 volumes, I somehow saw back in 1990. And the first volume came out in the beginning of 94, and the second volume came out in 1998. And I remember sitting at a desk where I began working on both of them in Philadelphia, where I lived at the time, thinking, I'm a reporter and I've always tried to stay away from personal opinion. I have always tried to keep my personal thoughts and experiences out of my work. That was stressed when I was at Stanford and when I went to work as a street reporter at KNBC. No politics, no personal opinions. Keep your emotions to yourself. You just report straight facts, strict facts, as you can get them. So that's how I grew up in my work. But as I started working on Glimpses of Other Realities, I knew I was going to places that would be difficult for a lot of people, because I knew they had been difficult for me. And sitting at my typewriter, which I was using at the time when I started Glimpses Volume 1, I remember thinking of one of the most important, pivotal moments in my life that had gotten me through going out to pastures where I was carrying plastic containers that had formalin and was trying to collect as many mutilated animal excisions as I could for Dr. John Altschuler in Denver, a very skilled hematologist, pathologist. And I would have to walk across pastures by myself and look at the sky and think, what is it that is doing this? Are they aware of what I'm doing? Does it anger them? Does it irritate them? The government certainly doesn't like my doing this. And thinking to this open sky, you're as vulnerable as anybody on this planet, and whatever is there, if it wants to take me out, it'll take me out. But until that moment, I'm going to continue to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm just going to keep going for as long as I can. And now, tonight, what I would like to do is to share what was behind that, because I think that what happened to me when I was 21 years old in the mountains of Idaho is the kind of rock that somehow something gave me for a life that was totally astonishing and unexpected thereafter. And this is what happened. When I was 18 and I graduated from high school in Boise High School, what I wanted to do more than anything else in the world was to go to college. And I was even contemplating going into astronomy because I loved astronomy. And my dad worked for the state of Idaho, and he really didn't have the money to put me through college. But my dad was in the Lions Club, and the Lions Club put on the Miss Boise, Miss Idaho pageants that went to Miss America in Atlantic City. And he said, why don't you enter these contests, and you can get scholarship that way. And it doesn't really matter whether you get to Atlantic City or not, but you'll get scholarships that will be a big help. Well, in 1963, I was in the Miss Boise pageant, Miss Idaho pageant, and I got crowns in both. And I was very happy, but it meant that I had to go to Atlantic City and walk that very long boardwalk in a swimsuit in front of 30,000 people, and that felt very uncomfortable to contemplate. So I told my father, I said, look, if you'll take my brother and my cousin and the three of us and take us up to Johnson Creek, which is a place we love to go. It was on the South Fork of the Salmon River, one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And we had been there many times. And I said, the airstrip, you fly us in and we'll camp, and I'll stay there for a couple of weeks, and I'll just climb the mountains a couple of times a day and get my muscles really toned up. And that's what we did. And my cousin and my brother and I, we stayed down. We camped on the creek, which was next to the airstrip that Dad took us in. And there was this mountain. And I went up to a certain level, not all the way to the top, but every morning and every afternoon, I'd go quite a ways up this mountain and then turn around and come back. And I had been doing that for probably a week or so. And then suddenly, one afternoon, the sun was close to going down behind the peak. I remember that. And I got up just like normal. And then I saw off to my right as I turned around to look down back where the airstrip and the creek, and my brother and my cousin would be getting ready for us to cook dinner. And there were these orange beams of light, and they were coming down through Ponderosa. And I remember thinking that they were that word exquisite, when something is so beautiful and so unique and so perfect, and the color I had never seen before. And I wasn't really thinking anything else except how beautiful, and I just wanted to touch those beams. And I started walking toward the beams at the top of this crest where I was. And as I began moving, I went into what I called 96 frame slow motion in motion picture film, when you crack up the speed and you slow the motion way down. And as I'm walking toward that orange light, I know I got closer, and I know I was aware of the strange slow motion. But I was fascinated by it, and then suddenly my next memory is that I'm down toward the bottom of the mountain, and my consciousness sees that one of the beautiful summer flowers that was all over this beautiful, beautiful hill, it was pulsing orchid white light, and it was clearly two colors, and it was sort of pulsing like that. And I was surprised. I didn't understand why I should be seeing a flower that was pulsing in this orchid white light. And I just started running on my normal path with the idea, not really of fear, just wanting everything to go back to normal. And when I stopped, every flower as far as I could see was pulsing this orchid white light. And when I looked back up to the mountain that I had just come down where those orange beams had been, it was like a Van Gogh toward the end of his life, the painting, like Starry Night, where you see all of the looping energy that is going through the hill. And you could see it. I could see this energy in the hill, and it was like the hill was breathing. And then stars, because now the sun went down behind the mountain, and a few stars were coming out, and they were pulsing exactly the same orchid white light. And at that moment, I do not know what it was. Warm jello, that's what it felt like, warm jello against my hands and my arms, lifted my own hands up to in front of my face. And I heard this thought voice, "You are one with the light is one with you, and you're in the hands of God forever." And I just stood there, trying to absorb everything that was happening. And then, like a rheostat, 10, 9, 8, 7, down to 0. Everything that was pulsing just went right back to normal. And at that moment, as I am now looking at the world completely different than I was a minute or so before. What came into my mind then was, never forget this. Underneath the surface of all matter, on this planet, throughout this solar system, throughout this Milky Way galaxy, throughout this entire universe, what underlies all matter is pulsing light. And once you take that inside of yourself, and it somehow nestles in what I feel is my soul, then when I walked alone in those pastures to go and cut excisions from animals mutilated by what law enforcement told me were creatures from outer space, I didn't really feel fear. I felt curiosity. I wanted to know who, what, and why. And that at the bottom of everything in this highly agitated moment on Earth, where all of us are feeling there's too much violence, there's too much revolution in a negative way, if what I've said to you and shared to you on this first Earthfiles YouTube news tonight ever helps you ever again in your life, as it has helped me for the last 38 years, then it was worth sharing. And I thank you very, very much. And if any of you have any questions, Lori Moriarty is standing by to translate them to you, and I will be happy in each of my YouTube news updates to try to take 3 or 4 questions after I have hopefully helped you learn some news, bring something from my personal journey that has helped me understand some of that which seems incomprehensible. And thank you for coming. What I just shared with you, both morning and night. I use photons, whether from a light or the sun every morning, anywhere that there is a sun, is I go out and extend my arms up. I've done this for 38 years. I extend my arms up and I say, I am one with the light. The light is one with me, and I'm in the hands of God forever. And that is my mantra. It is what ties me to the ground of the earth, and it's what ties me to entanglement with what I think is the pure photon energy of this universe, that if we understood, that is what our DNA, our telomeres can vibrate with in health. I am working on, oh yes, this is about the white powdered mummies in Peru that perhaps came from a cave in an area between Nazca and Palpa. I am personally extremely interested in this. I am doing my own separate research tracks, and I think that eventually we are going to learn that there is something extraordinary. But here is the sad part. I have grown up where I have always been reporting science, medicine, the environment, and that includes the animal mutilations and alien life forms. To me, they fall in that same category: science, environment, and medicine. And that in science, there is something called chain of custody. And when, no matter what I have been working on, I've had to use chain of custody in a lot of subjects that I have done. And the sad thing is that apparently the powdered bodies were found by huaqueros. They are the grave robbers in Peru that make money on finding artifacts and certain mummies, and then they sell them to an international trade. What I have been learning about that international trade of mummies and artifacts, I hope to be doing a much more reporting about in the future. I'm trying to nail some things down. If we had a science team of professional anthropologists who had been able to go with somebody from the Minister of Culture in Peru and with a camera running entered down into what I understand was a cave, and that the whole production team enters into the cave, and every single thing that is happening gets monitored by a camera. Nothing is touched, moved, sampled, unless there is a constant master shot and close shot, and that the DNA would have been gathered, collected by a DNA specialist, all happening in the same hour or two of entering the cave and being able to document where every single thing was, DNA sampling that would be totally monitored and mastered, everything written down in the sequence in which it happened. Then you have what is considered to be a chain of custody that can be published and that scientists will then accept as credible. I hope in the future that if more knowledge does come forward, that there might be other places where some of these strange bodies could be entered like what I'm describing, the way it should be done scientifically, then we might move everything onto credible, really credible ground. Right now, the problem we have is that there have been attacks for things not being scientifically valid. And the sad irony is that at least the two large white powdered bodies, they may truly be something in a hybrid category. And that how bad it would be if we lost science on those bodies because there was not chain of custody in the beginning. And so I hope that we will be able to learn more, that there will be reporting that scientists in universities like Stanford and Tulane and Yale and Harvard could be involved. But that's a long answer to explain how complex all this is, and that I don't dismiss everything that has been reported. I'm trying to learn more. Yeah, a question that a lot of us have asked each other in conferences and private discussions. Where is all of the back engineered extraterrestrial technology that neutralizes gravity, can project invisibility, is so advanced that a lot of the craft are self activating software and they don't even need a being in them? Where is that when we are still propelling our astronauts up on flame to go up to the ISS? And it's almost sad to realize that NASA has been basically taking orders from the CIA, and that the policies of denial about other life forms in this universe have been denied and affected every policy, including we will stay in carbon burning fuel with rockets for as long as we need to in order to get another base somewhere else, the breakaway civilization concept. And then I think that they have had this as their sort of their working plan, If they can get a base on Mars, and then they start introducing other life in the universe from another place, the Earth will be able to handle it, and that is sort of the reason why everything has been kind of theatrical as opposed to being honest and real. And sometimes I want to say this very honestly. I have had real compassion for some of the people that I have been able to talk to before they died, who have worked in our government and have been face to face with non-humans. I have no question about it. And they have said, I remember one man, I think I put this quote in one of my books. He told me he was very ill and sick and he was dying. And he wanted to say, he said, I want you to know that what you are researching and reporting, I know is correct. And he said, Linda, the truth is that the intelligences that we are dealing with, they are so strange. You use that term high strangeness. It's beyond high strangeness. And the truth is, I never wanted to take anything that I was working on home to my family. Well, that disconnect around the idea that Homo sapiens sapien cannot handle being told the truth, that the universe is full of life, and some of it is friendly and some of it is not, and some may be like standing up alligators, standing up lizards, tall, beautiful blondes, things that are blue, a variety of the gray types that range from total robots to cyborgs to hybrids to some kind of prime intelligence and beyond. I do not think that humanity is going to collapse if we're told the truth. Now, that would be very interesting for me to hear from you guys for next week. If you can communicate and Lori can gather together your own feelings about whether or not now in 2017, well, at the end of 2017, do you think that humanity can handle being told the truth? I do. I would. Yeah. Okay. So, thank you very much. I will look forward to your feedback on tonight. I will try to make each Thursday be different. Tonight was a mixture of science and trying to share with you what I feel that we all need to have reinforced. That there is a part of us that can be strengthened by the unseen. God bless.